1. Employment contract and terms of employment. Legal consequence: a poorly drafted or misunderstood employment contract can lead to disputes regarding salary, job responsibilities, termination, intellectual property rights, and other crucial aspects. Real-time scenario: Arjun, a newly hired software engineer, signed his employment contract quickly without thoroughly reading it. After a few months, he discovers that his fixed monthly salary is subject to significant deductions for project-related expenses that were not clearly explained during the hiring process. He feels unfairly compensated compared to his peers. Practical advice: read carefully before signing. Take your time to read and understand every clause in your employment contract before signing. Don't hesitate to ask the HR department or a legal professional to clarify any ambiguous terms or conditions. 2. Intellectual property rights, IPR. Legal consequence: software developers often create code, designs, and other intellectual property. Misunderstanding ownership rights can lead to legal battles if they leave the company and use or share work done during their employment. Real-time scenario: Sneha, a lead developer, created a highly efficient algorithm for data processing as part of her project at Tech Solutions Pvt. Limited. Her employment contract has a standard work-for-hire clause. Years later, after leaving Tech Solutions, she starts her own consulting firm and wants to use a similar algorithm in a project for a new client. Tech Solutions could potentially claim ownership of the algorithm and sue Sneha for IP infringement. Practical advice: understand work for hire. Recognize that in most employment scenarios in the software industry, any code, designs, or inventions created by you during your employment and related to the company's business are likely owned by the company. 3. Data privacy and security. Legal consequence: software professionals often handle sensitive personal data. Violations of data privacy laws, such as the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, 2023, can result in significant penalties for both the employee and the employer. Real-time scenario: Rohan, a database administrator at an e-commerce company, has access to customer details including names, addresses, and payment information. He uses his personal laptop to remotely access the company database without proper authorization and without using the company's secure VPN. This unauthorized access could be considered a breach of data security protocols and could lead to legal consequences if a data breach occurs. Practical advice: adhere to security protocols. Always follow your company's data security policies and procedures meticulously. Use secure VPNs for remote access, comply with password policies, and avoid storing sensitive data on personal devices. 4. Confidentiality and non-disclosure agreements, NDAs. Legal consequence: breaching confidentiality clauses in employment contracts or separate NDAs can lead to legal action by the employer, seeking injunctions and damages. Real-time scenario: Priya, a software developer working on a new feature for her company's flagship product, is excited about her work. She posts on her personal social media account, "Just cracked a major challenge in our new project. This is going to revolutionize how users interact with our app. Hush innovation, hush tech." While she doesn't explicitly name the feature or the company, a competitor's employee, who follows Priya, recognizes the general description and infers key aspects of the unreleased feature. Priya's employer later discovers this post. Practical advice: think before you share. Be extremely cautious about discussing your work, even in general terms, on social media or with individuals outside your immediate team and company. Avoid mentioning project details, upcoming features, technologies you are working with, or any internal information that could be considered confidential. 5. Non-compete and non-solicitation clauses. Legal consequence: while Indian law, under Section 27 of the Indian Contract Act, generally considers agreements that restrain trade as void, clauses that are reasonable and operate during the employment period are usually enforceable. Post-employment non-compete clauses are typically harder to enforce unless they fall under specific exceptions. Non-solicitation clauses, preventing you from poaching clients or employees, might have a better chance of enforceability if deemed reasonable. Real-time scenario: After resigning from Global Software Limited, where he was a key account manager dealing with major clients, Rohan joins a direct competitor. His employment contract with Global Software had a non-solicitation clause preventing him from contacting or soliciting Global Software's clients for a period of 6 months after leaving. Within this period, some of Rohan's former clients from Global Software moved their business to his new company, allegedly at Rohan's initiation. Global Software might sue Rohan for breach of the non-solicitation clause. Practical advice: understand the scope and duration. Carefully review any non-compete or non-solicitation clauses in your employment contract, paying attention to the specific restrictions, geographical limitations, and time frames. 6. Prevention of Sexual Harassment at Workplace, PORS, Act, 2013. Legal consequence: any behavior constituting sexual harassment is a serious offense with legal repercussions for the perpetrator, including penalties under the PORS Act and potentially other laws. Employers are legally obligated to provide a safe working environment and have a redressal mechanism. Internal Complaints Committee, ICC. Real-time scenario: during a late-night project deadline, a senior software architect, Vikram, makes repeated unwelcome sexual jokes and comments directed at a junior female developer, Shruti, making her feel uncomfortable and humiliated. Shruti reports this behavior to the Internal Complaints Committee, ICC, of their company. The ICC conducts an inquiry, and if Vikram is found guilty of sexual harassment, he could face severe disciplinary actions, including termination, and potentially legal consequences under the PORS Act. Practical advice: know what constitutes sexual harassment. Familiarize yourself with the definition of sexual harassment under the PORS Act, which includes unwelcome physical contact, sexual advances, demands or requests for sexual favors, sexually colored remarks, showing pornography, or any other unwelcome physical, verbal, or nonverbal conduct one of a sexual nature. 7. Labor laws and working conditions. Legal consequence: violation of labor laws related to working hours, wages, leave, and other conditions can lead to legal action against the employer. While some labor laws might have specific definitions of workman that historically might not have included all software professionals in supervisory roles, it's essential to be aware of your rights. The Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code, 2020, aims to consolidate and modernize these laws. Real-time scenario: a software development team at a startup is consistently made to work beyond their stipulated 9-hour workday, often stretching to 12 to 14 hours, without any overtime pay or compensatory off. The employees feel overworked and exploited. This could be a violation of regulations concerning working hours and overtime as prescribed under relevant labor laws. Practical advice: know your working hours, understand the legally mandated working hours and your company's policy on the same. Be aware of your rights regarding breaks and rest periods. 8. Cybersecurity and cybercrime. Legal consequence: engaging in unauthorized access, data breaches, spreading malware, or other cybercrimes using company resources or otherwise can lead to severe legal penalties under the Information Technology Act, 2000, and other relevant laws. Real-time scenario: while working from home, Karthik, a software tester, gets curious and tries to bypass some security restrictions on the company's testing server to explore functionalities he's not authorized to access. His actions are logged by the system, and the security team flags it as a potential security breach. Karthik could face disciplinary action and potentially legal consequences under the IT Act for unauthorized access. Practical advice: respect access controls, only access systems and data that you are explicitly authorized to use as part of your job responsibilities. Do not attempt to bypass security measures. 9. Tax obligations. Legal consequence: failure to pay income tax or misrepresenting income can lead to penalties and legal action from the tax authorities. Real-time scenario: Deepa, a software consultant, receives payments from both her full-time employer and several freelance projects. She only declares the income from her full-time job in her tax returns, hoping to avoid paying tax on her freelance earnings. The tax authorities later discover this discrepancy, and Deepa could face penalties, interest charges, and even legal prosecution for tax evasion. Practical advice. Understand your income sources. Keep accurate records of all your income, including salary, freelance earnings, and any other sources. 10. Whistleblowing. Legal consequence. While India doesn't have a comprehensive whistleblower protection law specifically for the private sector, certain provisions in other laws and company policies might offer some protection to employees who report illegal or unethical activities within the organization. However, the legal landscape is still evolving. Real-time scenario. Sunil, a senior architect, discovers that his company is using pirated software in its core operations, which is a violation of copyright law. He reports this issue through the company's internal ethics hotline. While there's no specific law guaranteeing protection against retaliation in this private sector scenario, the company's policy might offer some safeguard against adverse actions for reporting in good faith. Practical advice. Know your company's policy. Familiarize yourself with your company's whistleblowing or ethics policy, if one exists. Understand the reporting procedures and any assurances of confidentiality or protection against retaliation. 11. Termination of employment. Legal consequence. Wrongful termination can lead to legal challenges by the employee seeking compensation or reinstatement. Employers must follow the due process outlined in the employment contract and applicable labor laws. Real-time scenario. Pooja, a software developer with a good performance record, is suddenly asked to resign without a valid reason and without being given the notice period stipulated in her employment contract. Pooja could potentially challenge this termination as wrongful and seek compensation for the lack of notice and unfair dismissal. Practical advice. Understand termination clauses. Review the termination clauses in your employment contract, including the notice period required from both sides and the grounds for termination. 12. Job description clarity. Legal consequence. A vague job description can lead to disputes if an employer assigns tasks significantly outside the employee's understanding of their role, potentially impacting their career trajectory and compensation. Real-time scenario. Mahesh was hired as a front-end developer. Over time, his manager increasingly assigns him back-end tasks and database administration duties, areas where he has limited expertise and which were not mentioned during his hiring. Mahesh feels his role has been misrepresented and it's hindering his growth in his core front-end skills. Practical advice. Review your job description. Carefully review your initial job description and any subsequent revisions. Ensure it accurately reflects your responsibilities. 13. Compensation structure. Legal consequence. Lack of transparency or unfair changes in the compensation structure can lead to legal disputes regarding wages and benefits. Real-time scenario. Priya's offer letter mentioned a performance bonus but didn't specify the criteria or the frequency of payout. When she inquires after a year of good performance, she finds the bonus scheme is entirely discretionary and she might not receive anything. Practical advice. Understand all components. Ensure you fully understand all components of your compensation package, including base salary, allowances, bonuses, stock options, and their respective terms and conditions. 14. Deductions from salary. Legal consequence. Employers can only make deductions from salary for legally permissible reasons as outlined in the Payment of Wages Act, 1936. Unauthorized deductions are illegal. Real-time scenario. Arjun finds a significant deduction in his salary slip labeled team building activities. He was not informed about this deduction beforehand, nor did he consent to it. This could be an unauthorized deduction. Practical advice. No permissible deductions. Familiarize yourself with the legally allowed deductions from salary, example PF, TDS, professional tax, fines for damage or loss. 15. Probation period terms. Legal consequence. Termination during the probation period often has different rules regarding notice and grounds for termination compared to confirmed employees. Misunderstanding these terms can leave an employee vulnerable. Real-time scenario. Sneha was hired on a 6-month probation. After 5 months, her manager informs her that her performance is not up to par and her employment is being terminated with immediate effect, even though her contract mentioned a 1-week notice period during probation. Practical advice. Understand probation duration and terms. Clearly understand the length of your probation period and the specific terms and conditions related to termination during this period, including any notice requirements. 16. Notice period obligations. Legal consequence. Failing to serve the required notice period upon resignation can lead to salary deductions or other penalties as per the employment contract. Similarly, employers must adhere to the notice period or provide pay in lieu of notice during termination, unless for gross misconduct. Real-time scenario. Rohan, eager to join a new company, resigns from his current job and leaves immediately without serving the 2-month notice period stipulated in his contract. His former employer withholds his last 2 months' salary as compensation for the short notice. Practical advice. Plan your resignation. When planning to leave, carefully review your employment contract to understand the required notice period and plan your departure accordingly. 17. Resignation process. Legal consequence. Not following the company's official resignation process can lead to administrative issues, delays in final settlement, or even potential breaches of contract. Real-time scenario. Deepa verbally informs her manager about her resignation but fails to submit a formal written resignation as required by the company's policy outlined in the employee handbook. This delays the processing of her final salary and relieving letter. Practical advice. Follow company policy. Familiarize yourself with your company's official resignation process, usually outlined in the employee handbook or intranet. 18. Relocation clauses. Legal consequence. If your contract includes a relocation clause, you might be required to move to a different location as per the company's needs. Refusal could be considered a breach of contract, but the terms of relocation should be fair and reasonable. Real-time scenario. Mahesh's employment contract states that he can be relocated to any of the company's offices in India. After a year in Hyderabad, he is asked to move to Chennai with short notice and without any financial assistance for relocation. Practical advice. Understand relocation terms. If your contract includes a relocation clause, understand the conditions under which you might be relocated, the notice period, and any provisions for relocation expenses or assistance. 19. Foreign assignments. Legal consequence. Working on foreign assignments involves compliance with the laws of the host country regarding visas, work permits, taxation, and employment. Failure to comply can lead to legal issues in the foreign country. Real-time scenario. Arjun is sent on a 3-month project to the US by his Indian company. He doesn't have the correct type of work visa and is found to be working in violation of US immigration laws, potentially leading to deportation and issues with future travel. Practical advice. Ensure proper documentation. If you are assigned to work abroad, ensure that your employer obtains the necessary visas and work permits for you. Verify their validity. 20. Amendments to contract. Legal consequence. Unilateral changes to your employment contract by the employer without your consent might not be legally valid and could lead to disputes. Real-time scenario. Priya's company issues a new policy that significantly reduces the number of paid sick leaves she is entitled to, even though her original contract specified a higher number. Priya was not consulted about this change and did not agree to it. Practical advice. Document agreements. Ensure all terms and conditions of your employment are clearly documented in your initial contract and any subsequent amendments. 21. Governing law and jurisdiction. Legal consequence. Understanding which laws govern your employment contract and the jurisdiction of courts in case of disputes is crucial for knowing where and how any legal issues would be resolved. Real-time scenario. Rohan's employment contract with a multinational company states that it is governed by the laws of Singapore and any disputes will be resolved in Singaporean courts, even though Rohan is working in India. This could make it significantly more challenging and expensive for Rohan to pursue legal action against his employer in case of a dispute. Practical advice. Identify the governing law. Check your employment contract to see which country's laws govern the agreement. Understand the jurisdiction. Note where any legal disputes would be resolved, which courts. 22. Work for hire doctrine, revisited. Legal consequence reinforces understanding that code, designs, and documentation created within the scope of employment usually belong to the employer. Real-time scenario? Mahesh, during his employment at a software firm, developed a unique software library that significantly improved the efficiency of a key product. Even though he conceived the idea and wrote the initial code, because it was done within his employment scope, the intellectual property rights likely belonged to his employer. Practical advice. Assume company ownership. Generally, assume that any creative work directly related to your job responsibilities and created using company time or resources is owned by the company. 23. Patentable inventions. Legal consequence. If you invent something patentable during your work, understand the company's policy on ownership, potential rewards for inventors, and the process of patent filing. Real-time scenario? Priya, a senior developer, invents a novel method for data compression that has significant commercial potential. Her company has a policy that requires employees to disclose inventions, and if the company decides to pursue a patent, the inventors might receive a share of the royalties. Priya needs to understand this policy to protect her rights and potentially benefit from her invention. Practical advice. Know your company's invention policy. Familiarize yourself with your company's policy on employee inventions, including the process for disclosure, ownership rights, and potential rewards or recognition for inventors.